Thank you. Well, it's the top of the hour, so we'll get started and wish everyone a happy new year. Thank you for joining us today, a part of our GlomCon seminar transplant series. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rubin to introduce himself and Dr. Solez, our speaker today.
Okay, thank you, Dia. Welcome, everybody. I'm Mario Rubin. I'm substituting today for Dr. Safa, who had a family emergency, but he sends his regards to everybody. And as Dr. Wedgespak said, a happy and healthy new year for everybody. This is a great way to start the new year by having who is considered to be the father of kidney transplant pathology, Dr. Kim Solez, present the topic of xenotransplantation to all of us. Dr. Solez is professor of pathology at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada. He's also the chair of the Transplant Regenerative Medicine Community of Practice for the American Society of Transplantation. Back in 1972, he trained at Johns Hopkins under the mentorship of Dr. Robert Heppenstall. And I also had the pleasure of being trained by Dr. Heppenstall 9 years later while I was a fellow at Georgetown. The major difference is that both of us, Dr. Solez and my co-fellows and I, got the same advice for Dr. Heppenstall, which was to stop and smell the roses. Unfortunately, we spent a lot of time stopping and smelling the roses, but as you can tell, Dr. Solez did not, and he became a very prolific writer and outstanding teacher, and as I mentioned from the get-go, a pioneer in kidney transplant pathology. He has developed multiple educational techniques, as you can see in the slide. The nephrology email discussion group is famous. Of course, the BAMF classification of transplant pathology, who has served to provide some uniformity in the way kidney transplant slides are read. The Future of All That Jazz initiative, he has over 1,500 videos on YouTube, over 230 publications. I mean, something very, very unique. And today he's going to talk to us about the special aspect of this expanding field of xenotransplantation. Dr. Solez, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Okay, great. So this is the ethics of pig-to-human transplants, artificial intelligence, and why the future is porcine. So disclosures, I have no financial disclosures, but politically there is something. As chair of the BAMF Foundation, I pushed tissue engineering pathology as a logical future of transplant pathology starting in 2011, and actually in 2017, all the individual organ chairs agreed to start figuring out what tissue engineering pathology would look like for their individual organs. But now it looks like perhaps xenotransplantation will be a reality before stem cell generated organs. But I guess we can't be absolutely sure about that. Also, the two can be combined. You can imagine decellularized pig organ scaffolds recellularized with human cells to create a functioning organ useful clinically, if one can overcome the problems of getting the right cells in the right places and creating long loops of Henle so you can concentrate the urine. So, as many of you know, I work very closely with the best known AI person here in Edmonton, Rich Sutton. And his style of presenting is to give a slogan at the beginning. And his talks have just one slogan. You can see I have about 8 subjects here. But if I had to pick one, it's this idea that the rapid advance of artificial intelligence in the early part of 2023 applied to pig-to-human transplants is likely to be medicine's finest hour. And it will contain a lot of unusual activities that we do not have anything like from the past. So there's a very unusual feature of the time we are living in right now. And as a matter of fact, I started to document everything that's happening from January 3rd through to March 2nd, figuring that in that 60 days, GPT-4 will be released, we think. And so for any of you who are impressed with Chat GPT and what it can do, GPT-4 will be many orders of magnitude more accurate, more correct, faster, everything. And so it's really going to change human life for everybody, creating a massive increase in human creativity and scientific discovery, magnitude of discovery and number of discoveries as a consequence of AI advancement. And if you think about the challenges of pig-to-human transplants, that's exactly what we need, because right now, today, we don't know that technique works, but we've been trying for a while. And the timing of my activities, in terms of my role in the AST as chair of the Transplant Regenerative Medicine Community of Practice, we are having a controversies conference in October 2023 about pigs, Putin, and pandemic, how these three potent factors have reshaped the hybrid future of transplantation. But it will be mainly about pig-to-human transplants in the context of everything else. And I predict that by October of this year, October of 2023, we will know that pig-to-human transplants are working. And one of the reasons they'll be working is because of the rapid advance of AI. So things that are sort of beyond human intellectual capability are still possible with the assistance of AI. And then we will need a new Banff xenotransplant pathology classification with the xenografts, deep phenotyping, and it is quite possible that this will also unearth the remaining discoveries necessary to make stem cell generated organs, and maybe they will be in pig scaffolds. And then we'll need another Banff classification for that type of new transplant. But between the two then, that should entirely fill in the gap, and we can provide organs for everybody who needs them, whereas today we're only providing organs for 5% of the people who need them. This is all too complicated for the human brain. We need AI help. And I've been working on that question of how AI could help with all the big challenges of the human race. And I'll talk to you more about where pig-to-human transplants fit into that. Xenotransplantation, the ethics of it, people have been writing and thinking about that for a long time. Megan Sykes did a very good analysis of ethics in 2003. And I'd like you, as I talk today, to be thinking about which 40 people we should have in the room for this conference next October, so we can make the best intellectual decisions there. And please send me your suggestions for that. We don't just need science, we need the humanities too. And every one of you can help with this. And I look forward to receiving your suggestions. This is just more details, what you already know, that worldwide each year, 1.4 people are in need of a transplanted organ for end-stage organ failure. And we're only reaching about 5% of them during COVID. We were reaching 10% before COVID. And regenerative medicine and or xenotransplantation can save the remaining 90 to 95% over 1 million people annually. And it can also fix our field. I mean, there are some things that are not ideal in nephrology, renal, transplantation surgery, and kidney pathology. So people talk about the loss of luster in transplantation, workforce problems due to lack of appeal to the field to young people, and possibly technological unemployment. And you can imagine that positive aspects, stem cell therapies and xeno could correct all those problems. We need AI because these areas, both of them, are really beyond human cognitive capacity. We just can't wrap our heads around all the variables in making pig to human transplants work and doing it ethically, and all the variables in stem cell generated organs. So we've made this the 13th big challenge of humanity that AI can assist with. But what I'd like to point out is, for journal editors, medical leaders, for all of us, this really is medicine's finest hour. If we can make these things work, figuring out how to react to AI advancements in the early part of 2023, how it should impact on pig to human transplants, and how to proceed with that ethically, we really will have done something beyond the magnitude of other major medical advances. So we're kind of proud of this list. We think these are all the challenges of humanity in one list. And the reason that includes everything as unknown, unknowns, and other. But you're probably aware that AI has solved protein folding and the early steps of nuclear fusion. Both of them are extremely positively impactful on all of the human race. And the time is ripe to think about how we would address all these other things and how AI could help us. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says that in 2023, we will achieve 500 years progress in a single year. So that's his statement, not mine. But wouldn't that be amazing to be alive, to be experiencing what's going on in such a year that achieves that much advancement? So these are graphics by Yoshida Mogi. I think many of you have DALL-E machine image fatigue, so it's good to see images made by human beings sometimes. Yeah, so that's what you're seeing here. We have a research team of 28 people to address all these areas. We're amazingly diverse. We have an indigenous person, 2 people of color, and yeah, a really very interesting team. This is some of the student part of that team. And if you think about yourself and the cadre that you're a part of, what about this technological unemployment? Well, this is sort of a joke. This is a humorous slide, I want you to understand. But it is possible that because what we do in our professional lives is enormously more complicated than what anyone else is doing, we may be the only humans still employed in 2045. Isn't that cool? Doesn't that make you proud to be a nephrologist? Yeah. And there's a little bit of confusion between the technological singularity predicted for 2035 or 2045 and this particular year of 2023. And they're not the same. There is an article I read today by a friend of mine saying that ChatGPT is the technological singularity. And that's wrong, because as you well know, ChatGPT can hallucinate and confabulate and give you what looks like a perfectly good answer that's totally wrong. So that's not the technological singularity yet. But it must be admitted that things happen that make it look like we're awfully close. And it is possible now to get the feeling that with the help of a machine, you can write better than you can naturally write, you can draw better than you can naturally draw, and you can make much more exciting discoveries with the help of the machine that you could ever make as just a biological being. So it's a kind of amazing time to be alive. Yeah, so at the 2015 Banff meeting, Alex Lupi already described to us what precision medicine is, making it look very appealing back then. You had a video of Barack Obama, yeah. But imagine how much better precision medicine would be in 2023 and beyond. And we need that as a component of pig-to-human transplants, along with machine learning, spatial transcriptomics, deep phenotyping, and you're probably aware of this recent tweet from the Paris Transplant Group about exactly that. Xenografts, deep phenotyping. So part of the joint project with the Paris Transplant Group and NYU. Yeah, so the Banff classification of kidney transplant pathology, which I began 32 years ago, we're going to need new classifications like that for xenografts and for tissue engineering constructs. And it's quite exciting to think about that. What about tissue engineering? Well, some of you heard me talk about this in 2015. We still don't know our way around this problem, how to get the right cells in the right places when you decellularize an organ and recellularize it, particularly in the kidney. You end up with podocytes wandering in the interstitium, looking for something useful to do. Of course, there isn't anything for podocytes to do in the interstitium. And so you end up with fewer cells than you need in the filtering glomerulus and other cells that should be there in other parts of the kidney. So we still 10 years later, after this paper was written, we still don't have a solution to this. It doesn't mean it cannot be solved. But the other thing, which is simpler and could be quite distressing, think of if in the course of my presentation today, if you had to excuse yourself to the washroom 3 times, wouldn't that be disruptive to your life? Well, that's what would happen if our kidneys could not concentrate the urine. And it seems like in stem cell generated organs, making long loops of Henle is really, really difficult. We do not know how to do that. And it's really difficult at both ends. It's hard to decellularize the long loops completely. And then it's very, very hard, or let's use the word impossible, to recellularize the long loops of Henle. So at the ATC session in regenerative medicine in 2022, which I chaired, had all sorts of luminaries on the stage. Let's get these smart people to give us the answer of what the future is. Do any of you think we can solve this problem with a long loop of Henle within our lifetime? And they said no. And do you think that we could transplant kidneys that don't have long loops of Henle? And they also said no. But maybe that's not correct. Maybe with AI and the other advancements coming, and maybe in pig scaffolds, we'll learn how to solve this problem of the long loops of Henle. But overall, the ethics of pig-to-human transplants is massively dependent on whether the technique works. Because if it doesn't work, then you can criticize any amount of time or money spent on it because it's competing with everything else, which isn't working yet also. Yeah, but if it does work, that will change everything. And that's what I think will be the situation in October, that by October we'll know that it does work. And so then it becomes much easier to figure out what should the ethics look like. Now, this is probably the best paper in 2022 on ethics of pig-to-human transplants. But it's very interesting. There is another 2022 article by Johnson, much more definitive. They say we shouldn't do it. We should ban this. We should not do it. And because the alternative is allo transplantation, and we just aren't trying hard enough in allo transplantation. But you would all realize that allo transplantation does not scale to being able to fulfill the total need for organs in the whole world. We can maybe get from 5 to 10%, but we cannot get beyond there. So there has to be another technology added to allo transplantation to meet everyone. The other thing I'd like you to think about a little bit is medical writing and the rules for it. Look at this description here about the housing of pigs being bred for organs, and the fact that they can't go digging and rooting in dirt, wallowing in mud, and pigs really like to do that. Now, I think these are things we're going to need to consider, but it's unusual to see things like this discussed in medical writing. Some people would say, you're trying to be cute putting that in there. But on the other hand, to be ethically correct in our consideration of the pigs' welfare, we need to talk about things like that. So I have put together a series of slides on this very unusual period that we're in now in these 60 days. And what I'm about to tell you is the reason that the future is likely porcine. It's not likely porcine because we've made so much advantages as of today, January 8th, that we know for sure the pig-to-human transplants are going to work. No, the reason that it's very likely that they will work is because of these AI advances, which is going to make the teams working on this seem much more creative and productive. Yeah, and it's been estimated it's about a 10-fold effect. So if you fully manifest what artificial general intelligence can do, it's thought that the global gross domestic product would increase 10-fold. But if you think in terms of your own life, like your own team, your own fellows would be 10 times more productive and creative ideas and papers and so on than they are now. Yeah, so that's the future that we're looking at during this 60-day period. These are some of the things some of the speaking that I'm doing, and you might be aware there are already 2 previous videos with me talking about this on January 3rd and January 5th. Now, how does this relate to the Banff classification? Well, one of the interesting things is when we began Banff, I vowed that the classification and the lesion scoring would not increase the time for sign out, beyond the measured average at that time of 29 minutes. Complex surgical pathology cases, the definitive sign out took 29 minutes back in 1991, and we said the classification will not lengthen that. But now in theory, the sign out could take almost no time because the AI could have 95% figured out the case and just need a little bit of nuances from the human pathologist. So that's like an infinite speed increase. Pretty amazing to think about that. But it's also important to know that AI is not everything, and it never will be everything. There's always a human something else. And for instance, the best analysis of tubulitis, which is the best marker of cell-mediated rejection, is kind of the basis for the starting point of the BAMP classification, is a combination of handcrafted features, texture analysis, and AI. So how fast do you think progress will occur in 2023? So this is Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, saying that we'll see 500 years progress in a single year, massive increase in human creativity and scientific progress. And this is Yejin Choi, who says in important areas like value pluralism, we are making no progress at all. We are stuck and we're not doing anything. Yeah, so I think you would all agree that the truth lies somewhere in between. So this year you'll see somewhere between 500 years of progress and none at all. But it's important to keep pushing for things like value pluralism. What does that mean? It means that in ethics, there's not just one answer to everything. The answer of what we're aiming for depends upon the situation. And if we're going to teach ethics to machines, we need to teach those nuances so that machines also don't think that there's one answer to everything. They also understand value pluralism. So the third lesson is that AI is not limited in impact. Now, some of you would know a video of mine from January 20th, 2022, where David Pierce and I critiqued the lectures of Stuart Russell. But one of the other things that's in there is David Pierce's strong opinion that computers can never understand conscious human experience. It's impossible. He says they're micro-experiential zombies. But I think those of you who've used ChatGPT and DALL-E in the past little while and have been amazed by the output and how close to your conscious experience it is, would realize it's getting harder and harder to argue that computers are just micro-experiential zombies and can't figure out anything about conscious human experience. And the advances seen in ChatGPT and DALL-E, they're like the base camp of Mount Everest. And when GPT-4 comes this month or next, the changes will be much more profound. So this is a Jason Silva video talking about the way in which we're no longer limited by our skill level. I mean, you always were up until now, right? You can't get beyond your own skill level. You can try to increase it. But what he says in this video is going to be the reality for us very soon. That collaborating with machines, we can create products that are better written than we are capable of, that have better illustrations than we are capable of, better ideas, and occur faster, like within 10 seconds rather than taking weeks. And yet we are able to claim ownership because we provided the prompt to the computer that resulted in that product. So that's not plagiarism, but it's something that makes you uncomfortable, right? Because you don't know where the heck it fits. And we are going to be encountering more and more things like that. Things with your name on it that are much better than what the biological you could ever create. What are you going to do with that? It's never been something that you even had to consider, but in 2023, you will need to consider this. So there's something else that I'm involved in personally, and I'm pleased to say that one of our pathology residents has also joined this effort. You would get the impression, listening to me up until now, that somehow computers are more consequential than they used to be. Computers are increasing the limit of what humans can accomplish very markedly. So suddenly there's a possibility that you're in a conversation and you don't know whether you're conversing with a machine or a human being. And we think at the present time you would want to know that. So there's a group headed by Nell Watson that I'm a part of where we're creating visual and auditory standards. So when you enter a conversation, you know whether you're talking with a machine, a human being assisted by a machine, or a machine assisted by a human being, and it has both a distinctive tone and a symbol. And we're working on standards that would be applied worldwide. So you may also wonder, well, what happens when you give up control to machines? Well, I've been doing that for the past few months. Nothing bad has happened. But certainly with DALL-E searches, when DALL-E and I had a disagreement, I always deferred to DALL-E. So for instance, if I try to search for pig to human transplants, it doesn't like that because pig is an insult, according to DALL-E. On the other hand, if I use the word porcine, DALL-E is perfectly fine with that. So I've made many changes in the way I compose prompts based on what DALL-E or ChatGPT will allow. Are there any rewards? I mean, it's not good if it's all on the negative side. Yes, there are. It seems like DALL-E really likes me to search for things like world peace and human cooperation. And ordinarily DALL-E can't spell worth a darn, and you hate getting any letters in your graphic because it ruins it, because it's always misspelled. But when I search for those things, miraculously, DALL-E suddenly finds that it can spell after all, like you see in the top and bottom there. Happy place and happy love. Yeah. Finally, it's interesting to think about the future and how positive it could be. If you think about how capable machines are becoming, you could think of it going either way, right? It could be utopia, could be apocalypse. Well, a while ago, the number of people on the apocalypse side was a lot greater than the number of people on the positive outcome side. So Rich Sutton, the AI scientist that I work with here, and I felt there was very great likelihood of a positive outcome with artificial general intelligence. But it seemed like no one else agreed with us. And something quite dramatic happened that last January 20th, I did a critique in a video of Stuart Russell's lectures, the ones that he gave in December 2021. And in those lectures, it's quite distinctive, and for me, a little bit disturbing, that he says no matter how smart machines get, humans must always be in charge, period. No discussion. And I thought, well, come on, how is that even possible? If they're that much smarter than us, they can outwit us. And so how do you think it's going to work if we try to boss them around when they're massively smarter than we are? Well, Stuart Russell has had a remarkable turnaround. You might think this turnaround occurred in some quiet little out of the way place where no one would notice. But no, it occurred in his presentation to the Nobel Prize Committee. How is that for a high profile? And in that setting, he suddenly came up with the same conclusion that Rich Sutton and I have come to, that a world with highly intelligent machines in charge could work very well. And he talks here about the gross domestic product of all nations could go up tenfold. Yeah, just massive positive things could occur. And it's kind of nice. I mean, I don't know why this turnaround occurred, but it is a dramatic difference. His opinion, December 5th, 2022, is entirely the opposite of what it was a year before that. So let me just tell you about Rich Sutton's idea of eyes on the prize. The case for ambition and artificial intelligence research within your lifetime. AI researchers will understand the principles of intelligence, what it is and how it works, well enough to create beings of far greater intelligence than current humans. This will change everything, the way we work and play, our senses of identity, the goals we set for ourselves and our societies, with the greatest intellectual achievement of all time, an achievement of science, of engineering, of the humanities whose significance is beyond humanity, beyond life, beyond good and bad. I call it the prize. The prize is a great and glorious goal. Ambitious AI researchers should keep their eyes on the prize. Yeah, so that kind of advance is very likely to allow successful pig-to-human transplants. And it's because of that AI advance that I argue that the future is porcine. So this is the next to the last slide of the talk. In our original location and Banff classification, we had mule deer poking their heads into the meeting rooms. And now soon we will have pig organs in the operating room. Come a long way from animal to animal. And that's fine and kind of classy as a slide, but I thought you might want to discuss this eyes on the prize more, so it's good for us to end on that. I'll just read it to you again and see what you think about it. See if you can accept this, see what you think the alternatives are. The case for ambition and artificial intelligence research. Within your lifetime, AI researchers will understand the principles of intelligence, what it is and how it works, well enough to create beings of far greater intelligence than current humans. This will change everything, the way we work and play, our senses of identity, goals we set for ourselves and our societies, the greatest intellectual achievement of all time, an achievement of science, of engineering, and of the humanities whose significance is beyond humanity, beyond life, beyond good and bad. I call it the prize. The prize is a great and glorious goal. Ambitious AI researchers should keep their eyes on the prize. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I thought there's a lot here to discuss and a lot that is unlike anything you had ever considered before. You always had a clear idea of what plagiarism was, and this talk has caused you to shake that up a little bit and to realize some things like that, where the AI allows you to put your name on something you couldn't have possibly done yourself, you probably could accept, and other things like that you probably couldn't. And that's just one of numerous different things that you may wish to discuss. But I would point out that, one thing I can almost guarantee is in 2023, the questions you feel you're left with today, you will have the answers to probably by the end of the year. And that's very exciting. So I would welcome any questions, and you can make them as, emotional or unemotional, or cute or uncute, That's what I'm saying. These are areas where we need to inject a little bit of human emotion, because this stirs strong feelings. And it's something that we need to get used to discussing. Yeah.
So Dr. Solez, that was an outstanding and very stimulating and controversial, I may say, presentation. Yeah. So let me ask you a simple question. If we did not have this shortage of organs that we have today, do you think that xenotransplantation will have any role whatsoever?
No. I think that if we didn't have the shortage, you can think of all sorts of reasons. I mean, pigs are cute, they approximate human intelligence. There are all sorts of reasons why, given the option of a pig organ versus a human organ, if there are enough human organs, no, you wouldn't ever want to go here. Yeah, so that's okay. Absolutely right. I'm also interested in what Lynn.
Yeah, Dr. Cornell has raised her hand and she has a question. So Dia, can you please unmute her?
Yes, you should have the ability to unmute now.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Cornell.
There she goes. Yeah.
Hi. Oh, I started to start my video too. I'm on my iPad, so it's a little different. Thanks for this, of course, always interesting and thought-provoking talk of yours. I was just going to comment, about the human part of AI, and humans must always be in charge. I mean, the AI essentially is, at some point was, of course, it was created by humans.
Yeah, it's like our children, right? It's like giving responsibility to your kids, which isn't bad. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it is giving responsibility to our kids, but not to our dogs, for example. Some things, it's like the Chat GPT, for example, is a reflection of what's on the internet. So, for example, I put in, just trying it out everything, I put in, is human slavery ethical? And I get a response like, well, both sides can be considered, and blah, blah, blah. It's like whatever is there, which is, in our human society, we say human slavery is not ethical, but the Chat GPT just has some, a response that's based on what's on the internet.
Yeah, but it's a partly broken app. So it is not representative of what will be there in GPT-4. GPT-4 will have much higher accuracy, won't, confabulate, won't make up stories. Yeah, so it's going to be way better than this.
but getting back to the scientific part of it, I would like an AI mechanism to, for example, review the scientific literature and make sense of confusing literature. Like, what is antibody-mediated rejection, or what is chronic cellular rejection versus, you know, BK polyomavirus infection, or something like this. You know, I would like an AI mechanism to be able to make sense of confusing literature, and also to recognize gaps in the literature. And how does it recognize gaps? And that's where I get back to the human side of it. For example, as you know, we have this work group through the American Society of Transplantation on ethics of xenotransplantation, and we are doing a literature review on ethics of xenotransplantation. And we're finding gaps in the literature. So how does AI deal with, you know, with finding these gaps and, you know, addressing that there are gaps and this kind of thing? And that's where I get into the sense that we created it essentially from a human standpoint.
It's not limited by us. It's not like limited to individual human intellect. It's like when you add all those intellects together, right? So no, I think that what the challenge will be is not the limits, but the things that really surprise you and shock you. Like the machine will have much better sense of humor than you do, tell better jokes, understand jokes better, be able to analyze jokes better. I mean, all those things that you thought were uniquely human, and you can obviously beat any machine at that stuff, you'll immediately find that you can't, and that it's much quicker than you are. You know, like it can do all this stuff in 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that would take you a much longer time to do. So rather than, I know all of you would be satisfied to think of all the limits and the things it can't do, but that's not the experience you're gonna have. You're gonna have the other experience. Yeah.
Right.
But we do also need to realize that AI, and this is something I think wasn't really addressed in your talk with respect to xenotransplantation. I know other people have comments too. I don't need to be the only one commenting. We could talk all day about it. But you know, it is a human perspective, and it represents what humans, you know, their attitudes, you know, in general, and human society. That's what it reflects. You know, for example, it doesn't reflect the pig's perspective on whether,
sure,
you know, she could be used, you know, just at the disposal, you know, for a human. So anyway, I think we really do need to keep it in mind. That's an interesting way of putting it. It is like having a you know, a human child, and that's what it is. Anyway, I'll stop talking now, but thanks for the talk.
Great, thank you.
So Dr. Solez, I am not as positive as you are in terms that our questions being answered by AI by the end of the year. I mean, case in point, if I ask, would xenotransplantation be beneficial to humans? The clinical trials at NYU and Alabama, which are the two institutions I know of, either have just begun or they are going to begin quite soon. I doubt that they will be completed in an acceptable fashion by the year's end. So
see what I think
by questions being answered by AI.
Yeah. So what I'm not saying that we'll have proof that it works, but we'll have significant, you know, indication that it works, that we feel strong incentive to keep on going. We don't really feel like that now. It's sort of, we don't really, we don't have anything that really gives us the indication that this is going to work. Now it's true that to get something that's, you know, statistically significant and can be, you know, published might take longer than a year. It probably would. but some positive indication that you can get really, enthusiastic about this N of 1 or N of 2 thing that makes you want to keep on going. I think we'll be at that point by October. So and therefore, the ethicists won't be able to say, well, we don't even know that this will work. That's what we would say now. That why are we even talking about this? We have no evidence that it will work. I think by October we'll have something. It won't necessarily be statistically significant, but it will move you, emotionally to want to look at it further. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Gupta in the chat, I don't know if you can see it, has a question, which is an interesting one. I was wondering what your answer might be. It has to do, do you see it? About the
yeah.
Okay.
But my understanding is that religious scholars have said that life-saving is beyond these considerations. And even though you cannot eat pork, you can still receive a pork, pig valve and so on, or whole organ. So I think they've already answered that. That there is no religious objection.
Okay. Dr. Garrett has another question, which is the last one just posted. I don't know if you can answer.
Yeah, so if AI is vastly more intelligent than the individual, so we're thinking that AI, we can help determine what it's like by the starting point and sort of the way it gets there. You're absolutely right. At some point we will lose control, but maybe we will lose control when AI has already decided that their job is to maintain the earth for the benefit of humans. That it's not that they're going to ask humans what they want, but they already know better than the humans what would be good for them. And I mean, that's also sort of, paternalistic thing. But when you're massively smarter than the thing that you're looking after, that would also likely occur. And maybe that will turn out to be right. That the machine will understand human happiness and human welfare better than we do, and the outcome could be quite good. So I've been talking about this for a long time. There's a 32-second part of the promo for the future and all that jazz from 2016 that talks about when you wake up in the morning and the machines have taken over. And so you look outside and everything's green and the oxygen tension in the air is higher than it's ever been, and pollutants are gone and the levels of the oceans are going down. And when one human being tries to fight with another, there's this unseen force just gently separates them. Now, boys, we don't do that anymore. So and you may or may not like my 32 seconds, but I've been talking about how good it could be with machines in charge for a long time. And every morning at 4 a.m., I don't know what you're doing at 4 a.m., but I get up and I listen to CBC Radio 1 and I record the news. It's anywhere from 4.5 minutes to 10, looking for signs of human cooperation or lack thereof. That's not enough. I also do NBC Nightly News for kids. They have a kids version, as you probably know. And there you can't leave loose ends because kids are made anxious by that. So every story has to tie up. And I'm kind of trying to analyze what are the problems every day in human cooperation, and how could possibly machines do it better? There's an existing project, you probably know, of a democratic construct created by a machine that a group of humans voted as being superior to anything that they had heard of from humans. So it is possible for machines to create things better than what humans can make, that humans like better.
So Dr. Amber, of course, states that humans feed artificial intelligence, and therefore we can expect results depending upon the data that was fed. Your thoughts?
Well, it's quite clear that the existing prompt responses go way beyond what you would get from any individual human, that they are not ever limited in that way. So you would say they're limited by all publicly available human knowledge on the internet, but that's not much of a limit. And they also have some ability to figure out which is right and which isn't, and that will be much better, I think, with GPT-4. So it is, and it's able to create its own data in the long run. So it's not going to be just relying on human data forever. There will be, machine-generated data to add to that. So every way you might want to say that this would be limited or really not, anyway, spend some time with existing products and see how limited you feel they are, and then realize that there's something much better coming. And I think you'll see that the problem is really on the other side. What do we do now? Then when with every skill set for yourself that you value, you now know a machine right beside you that can do everything better than you, reliably, and doesn't need to be paid. And it's like, holy smokes. Yeah.
Okay, before we go to the last question posed by Dr. Cornell, I want to make sure that the audience knows that we have uploaded the references provided by Dr. Solez, as well as a very interesting paper on the ethics of xenotransplantation. They're both in the chat.
Cool.
Dr. Cornell is talking about xenotransplantation versus regenerative medicine, cost effectiveness.
Right.
Your
so
thoughts?
what I feel is that it's exactly as I said on that slide. Once pig-to-human transplants are working, then the opportunity cost is less to worry about. But right at the moment, it's possible that pig-to-human transplants won't work at all, and therefore every moment that we spend on it could be better spent somewhere else, right? But I think as we get toward later in the year, that will no longer be the case, that we can say, well, it's not the slightest indication that it's working. I think by that time there will be some indication that it is working, even if not absolute proof. So then the competition is between something that will work in our lifetime and other things that will not work in our lifetime, probably. Or the pig scaffolds, like pig kidney scaffold generated, stem cell generated organs, could be a sort of byproduct with that not only are we doing pig to human transplants, but we're also doing stem cell generated ones with actual human cells on pig scaffolds. So you could imagine that could also work quite well.
Okay, well, you have received a lot of praises for your outstanding presentation. Thank you.
Right.
We'll have you probably back in October. I need to speak to Dr. Saf about it for you to either receive the honors or express your apologies for not.
Yes, one more way for the other. But also send me ideas. Who should the 40 people in the room for that controversies conference be? I want to make sure we have the best possible names for that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And happy Sunday to everybody. And we'll see you back in the Transplant series in February.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week back on GlomCon. Have a great rest of your day.